When people think about the birth of the modern vampire, one name always dominates the conversation: Dracula. Bram Stoker's 1897 novel is widely credited with creating the image of the aristocratic vampire that still influences books, movies, comics, and television today. For more than a century, Dracula has stood as the undisputed king of vampire fiction, becoming so iconic that many readers assume everything came from him. But what if that isn't entirely true? What if one of the most important vampires in literary history appeared more than 25 years before Dracula? And what if many of the characteristics we associate with Count Dracula had already been introduced by another immortal whose name most people have never heard? Today, we're reopening one of Gothic literature's greatest mysteries to investigate whether Bram Stoker truly created the modern vampire, whether he perfected an existing idea. Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to more vampires. Leave a like and tell us in the comments, was Dracula original or inspired by Carmilla? To understand this mystery, we need to travel back to 1871, more than 2 decades before Dracula. Irish writer Joseph Sheridan Le Fanu published Carmilla. At first glance, it seemed like another Gothic ghost story filled with lonely castles, mysterious visitors, and unexplained illnesses. Yet beneath its haunting atmosphere was something entirely different. Carmilla wasn't a grotesque monster hiding in the shadows. She was elegant, intelligent, beautiful, and patient. Instead of brute force, she won their trust before slowly draining both their strength and their lives. Most people imagine that Dracula introduced the idea of the sophisticated vampire, the aristocrat capable of blending into society while secretly feeding upon the living. But Carmilla had already done precisely that. She manipulated rather than attacked, seduced rather than hunted openly, and turned psychological fear into a deadly weapon. The real question is whether Bram Stoker actually knew Carmilla before writing Dracula. Unfortunately, no surviving letter or diary contains a direct confession from Stoker. Joseph Sheridan Le Fanu was not an obscure writer. By the time Stoker developed Dracula, Le Fanu had become one of the best-known Gothic authors. Stoker worked within literary and theatrical circles, surrounding himself with authors and critics who were deeply familiar with contemporary Gothic literature. Both stories take place in isolated regions of Central Europe, where ancient castles hide secrets older than memory itself. Both replace the image of the monstrous beast with something far more unsettling. A predator so charismatic that victims willingly lower their defenses. Even the gradual physical decline of the victims, the mysterious weakness and exhaustion appears in both works with striking similarity. Does that mean Dracula copied Carmilla? Not necessarily. Stoker was drawing inspiration from far more than a single novel, including centuries of European folklore. Perhaps the real question is why Dracula became immortal while Carmilla slowly disappeared from public memory. The answer may lie in the rise of cinema. Cinema embraced Dracula as one of horror's greatest villains. Icons like Bela Lugosi and Christopher Lee transformed him into a cultural phenomenon. Yet history has a curious way of correcting itself. Over the last few decades, Carmilla has experienced an extraordinary revival. Scholars increasingly recognize her importance. Today she appears not as a forgotten curiosity, but as one of vampire fiction's foundational figures. So, did Bram Stoker copy Carmilla? The answer is nuanced. The similarities are too numerous to ignore, yet the differences are equally important. History may have crowned Dracula as the king, but he stands upon foundations built by those before him. Carmilla was an architect of the myth. If you enjoyed this mystery, subscribe to more vampires and leave a like. Do you believe Stoker was inspired by Carmilla? Share your theory below.